Hello my lovelies, let's make a chocolate Swiss roll cake. It's a great addition to summer cakes. It's so light and fluffy. So to start, we're going to need to separate 4 eggs. Don't worry, you're going to end up using the yolks and the whites, so there will be no wastage. We're going to start by beating 4 egg whites with 1/3 cup of sugar until you get stiff peaks. This will take around 5 minutes, so you better have great biceps. Once you get that stiff peak stage, just set them aside, and then we're going to get on with the egg yolks. Now, we're just going to beat the egg yolks with 1/3 cup of sugar and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. You want to beat this until light and pale. This will take around 2 to 3 minutes. This adds a buckload of air to the sponge along with the fluffy egg whites. Once you have those perfectly whipped egg yolks, you can then set them aside and we can get on with the dry ingredients. As you can already tell, we are trying to get as much air into this cake as possible to create the lightest sponge. And another way to do that is to sift our dry ingredients, which are 1/2 cup of flour, 3 tablespoons of cocoa powder. Always use the best cocoa powder, don't compromise on quality. 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and you want to make sure you sift that through as well, with a pinch of salt. So we're just going to add the dry ingredients to the egg yolk mixture along with a 1/4 cup of melted butter. And at this point, you can also add coffee to give it an extra kick, but I have kids and they don't need an extra kick of anything. You just want to mix this until well combined, but don't over mix it. Add the egg whites in 3 parts and fold them in very gently. Be careful not to knock out any of the air that we worked so hard to get in there in the first place. You can add orange zest or peppermint extract to change things up a bit. Like I mentioned earlier, we could have used coffee in the sponge too. The possibilities are endless. Now we are going to add the second part of the egg whites to the mixture. Again, be careful not to overmix or beat any of the air out of the eggs. If I haven't already said it before, please take the time to leave me a comment if you have any specific recipes you would like me to share. I'd love to hear from you. Now the final 1/3 of egg whites are going in. I honestly got tired of folding in those egg whites. The sacrifice we make for beautiful cakes, right? Trust me, it's all worth it in the end when you're enjoying this Swiss roll with a hot cup of tea in front of the telly tonight. You are going to thank me. Make sure you are folding in the ingredients from the bottom of the bowl and mixing in the egg whites properly. Otherwise, you'll end up with a heavy sponge cake. It's so easy to fold the mixture incorrectly, so take the time to get it right. When mixed correctly, you will get a beautiful, glossy, light cake batter. Now you first want to grease the parchment paper lined tray with some melted butter. This will help release the sponge after baking, because at that point you will need to move really fast. As you can see, I took the time to grease all the little corners with that melted butter. I used a brush to make sure that it was evenly spread out. Now just pour the batter into the tray and level it off with an offset spatula. It may not seem like this is enough batter, but this cake will rise because of all of the air that we incorporated into it. So don't worry, you are doing just fine. Stop second guessing yourself and let's get that cake into the oven. Bake the cake at 180 degrees Celsius for around 10 to 12 minutes. Do not overbake this cake, otherwise it will end up crispy and crunchy, and that's not what you want. You want a soft and delicate cake. No time to celebrate. While the cake is in the oven, we have other things to get on with. Cut a piece of parchment paper longer than the size of the baking pan, around 5 to 6 inches longer. Dust the parchment paper with 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder, making sure you get to all of the edges. This will keep the cake from sticking to the parchment paper when cooled. Flip the hot cake onto the parchment paper and breathe in that cocoa powder that flies around in the air after the cake is flipped. Peel off that parchment paper, and while the cake is hot, roll it up tightly from the narrow end. And for anyone asking, yeah, it made a huge mess in my kitchen. I'm still cleaning it up. Now, as I showed you before, we needed the 5 to 6 inches of parchment paper. This is why, so that we can roll it up properly and allow it to cool to room temperature. The next step is to make some vanilla whipped cream. So we want super chilled whipped cream, around 1 cup. And to that, we're going to add 3 tablespoons of sugar and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Beat this for around 2 to 3 minutes until you get stiff peaks. So be careful when whipping cream. There's that fine line between whipped cream and all of a sudden it becomes butter. So keep an eye on it. At this point, your Swiss roll cake has come down to room temperature. You just want to gently roll open your Swiss roll. Don't worry about the cracks. We're going to fix that. This tells me where I need to start rolling from. We're going to spread the whipped cream between the cake and roll it up and refrigerate for around 30 minutes. In the meantime, let's get on with the ganache. This is going to be a pourable ganache, so the quantities will be slightly different. Heat half a cup of heavy cream to a simmer. Do not let it boil. Add half a cup of chocolate chips and let it sit for around 2 to 3 minutes. If you aren't a fan of milk chocolate or dark chocolate ganache, which I have never come across, you can actually choose to do a white chocolate ganache instead. However, the quantity of the chocolate increases to around 3/4 of a cup of white chocolate to half a cup of cream. Guys, if you haven't hit that subscribe button, I don't know what you're waiting for. Get on with it right now. Wow, look at that ganache. It's so silky and smooth. I have a confession to make. After all that filming, I did end up eating the leftover ganache with a spoon. No wastage, remember? Pour the ganache over the Swiss roll while it's still warm. Allow the ganache to drip down the sides. Chill in the fridge for around 30 to 60 minutes, but no longer than that. Slice and serve. Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you liked this video. Do give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and if you haven't done so already, don't forget to subscribe. Bye!